Welcome to our series on breaking down sun salutations or Surya Namaskar. So we're looking at all of the individual poses that make up a sun salutation. In the previous few videos, we've looked at the forward fold aspect of a sun salutation, and we're breaking that down so that you have a whole week to really work on and take as many weeks as you like, but to work on the forward fold, to build that intelligence in the body so that when you do repeat it 10, 20, 108 times in your sun salutations, that you build up that intelligence in the body to not necessarily do the pose perfectly, but to pinpoint those little details that could really help reduce pain or prevent an injury. So in this video, we're going to look at forward folds, and I'm going to introduce a very, I think it's a bit more of a subtle concept. So at first, it's just something that we hear it a few times, and then eventually we can start applying it. So we use imagination first, and we work towards incorporating that into the practice. And this is how to deal with the cardiovascular issue of sun salutations. So it is, especially when you're doing a lot of them, and sun salutations are nice because you can take them as slow as you want, or you can take them as fast as you want. So as you progress, you can do them faster and faster. And how to deal with that breathing and moving the energy in the body, and how not to have that energy compress and create more tension. So there is a way to start thinking about working with that it's extremely effective, and working with these different diaphragms or bandhas in the body, and how to look at that. So we'll touch on that today, and we'll also work on really getting deeper into forward folds. Okay, so here we go. So we are working on this aspect of the sun salutation. You come up and you come down onto your forward fold. So how to address this shape, this component of your sun salutation. We've looked at why not to bend the knees, right? Instead of bending the knees, we want to work this sun salutation, keeping the knees as straight as possible. And bending the knees here is an emergency tool that you have in case you hurt your back while practicing. If not, you're going to address the cardiovascular aspect of the pose, but without doing the pose with those knees completely straight and the legs active, you will never address the flexibility of the hamstrings. So it is so important to really straighten the knees in a sun salutation. If you do have a back problem, address that back problem. Practice stretching the hamstring and resolving that, and then go ahead and do the sun salutations once you can keep the knees straight. So we've addressed that in the previous two videos, and now we're going to work on, so the first pose we'll work on today is called Hero's Pose or Virasana. So if this is very difficult for you, there are ways to do it on the chair and all kinds of different things, but this pose will balance the hamstrings. So Virasana addresses the quads, and it also addresses that grounding of the top of the femur, which it's important to learn because eventually, once you can ground the femur, it releases the breath and the energy in the body too. So if this is always tense and coming up, tight, legs that lift like this, there is this lack of space and lack of ability to in or lift and have that energy come all the way from the root all the way up. So it's an important action to start learning, and it takes time. I'm going to start Virasana with a block, and I'll quickly show you the different variations. So you can if you have the flexibility in the hips, in the quads, if your quads are long, you can practice here where you're sitting down. If this is difficult and there's pain in the knee, then we come up and we use a block. All right. If this is very difficult and there's pain in the knee, you may use two blocks. So I'll show you what it looks like from the back to come in, come here, and bring the legs behind you and then go ahead and sit here, making sure there isn't any pain in the knee and that the feet are pointed back. Okay, to come out, make sure that you come out carefully and just bring the legs forward and come out very carefully so you keep your knees safe. If you're very, very tight and that's not accessible, then you can start out on a chair here with one leg forward, and this is your Virasana. Okay, like this. And this is your Virasana for now. And you can add a little bit of a support here, you know, on your heel, and eventually more. Okay, and work your support so that you can start stretching the quad. So this is a very intense stretch in the quad that you would get. So breathe here. So I'll start out in the chair and then I'll do the rest of the exercises on the floor. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to take a few breaths. So release the eyes, the ears, and the throat. Really feeling that working on the quad. So once I can release the muscles of the abdomen, the eyes, the ears, and the throat, then I'm going to start noticing if I were to, you know, put my hands around my head like this. I just give myself that sensation. So this is addressing the cardiovascular aspect of the pose, but really is something, it's a sensation that you can start developing in every single one of your poses while you're walking or going for a run. It really is applicable everywhere, especially if you're ever having maybe like a discussion with someone, or you're getting to a place where you're agitated. If you can learn this, you can apply it to that too. So it's a great tool to have. All right, so the way it works is when you inhale, this brain diaphragm, let's call it, you know, we have a diaphragm here that works when we breathe. It brings, you know, the lungs, you know, the air's out of the lung, or it makes the lungs have, you know, space for the air to come in. So we have this diaphragm in the brain. It's an imaginary diaphragm. It's a, you know, it's a yogic diaphragm. It's an energy diaphragm. So let's start there. So when you inhale, you release the brain into itself. When you exhale, you don't expand the brain out ever, but you would release the brain out into the circumference of this head diaphragm. Okay, so inhale, release the brain in, exhale, release the brain diaphragm out. So give it a few breaths and see what it is that you can experience. So releasing the eyes, the ears, the throat. Inhale, release the brain into its center. Exhale, release the brain out into the circumference of the head, of the brain. So do that for a few more breaths. And then you would switch sides and do it to the second side of your asana. So if you're in the chair, go ahead and switch sides and do this exercise. If you need to put your hand here for a minute, you can, just to get that sense. And it's all the way around the head. So breathe in through the nose, release into the center, almost like the brain collapses into its center. And then as you exhale, it releases out into the circumference of the brain. So take a few of these breaths. And we're going to go into the same pose, but we're going to work at it closer to the floor now. So if this is too difficult for you, just do it again on the chair. So the way that I will do this is come out. We're gonna always start Virasana with the left leg. So left leg into Virasana because it's how we massage the intestinal system. We start on the left because it's your descending colon and you want to start here and then, you know, improve that digestion with the action of the legs. So left leg in Virasana first, and then you have your right leg extended out in front of you. So here, the things that you're working on are lifting the kneecap. So refer to that first video that we worked on. Then really grounding the femur here. So you're rotating these thighs in, grounding the femur. So bringing the top of the leg down towards the back of the leg, lifting that kneecap, and having this right foot active. You can even, you know, use a block here if you'd like. All right, and now what we're doing is, if you have a support, you can use a chair in front of you, you can use a table, or you can use blocks, whatever it is that you have, so that you can come forward without rounding the back. All right, so we're going to take a few breaths here and do the brain diaphragm exercise one more time. So inhale, the brain releases in, exhale, the brain releases out. If this is too much and you can just listen to the words and do the best that you can, but at least breathe. With that, so with this leg in Virasana, this leg straight, kneecaps lifted, I'm going to start working on the rotators here. So I'm going to start rotating forward, and this is a very important aspect of my forward bend. Make this leg very active. Sit bones here, and then we're going to feel that the pelvis is rotating around the head of the femur, and I'm going to rest my head on the block and soften the belly, eyes, ears, throat. Make the right leg very active, lift the kneecap and stretch through the back of the leg. Straighten, back straight, eyes soft, ears soft, throat soft. Okay, so I will do one side and then we're going to do the second side. So you can do, 10 reps of 30 seconds. You can do in the beginning, but really I want to get to the point where I can do each side for 3 full minutes. So when you're doing each side for 3 full minutes, you will see change starting to happen in the body. So less than 3 minutes, it's just an indicator that you can work yourself up with shorter time in the pose, but more reps. And eventually you can make these little reps longer and longer until you can hold it for about 3 minutes. So once you've held it, you can stop the video, do it for 3 minutes, and then we'll do the second side together. So here's the second side. So in between poses, I make sure that when I come out, I bring my foot in towards the inside and come out. And I go ahead and set up for the second side. So now the right leg is in Virasana. I come back. Again, if the knee hurts, I can put another block here, or I can sit on the chair. And I can put my foot on the wall or in a block. Make sure that I am parallel to the wall with my hips. I have a support for my head. I have no pain in the knee. Again, we're grounding the top of the femur. We're lifting the kneecap and making this leg very active, making sure that my foot, that I am not collapsing the inner ankle. Collapsing the inner ankle causes really a lot of tension on the outside of the knee. The inside of it does not give you that balanced knee. So here, practice, balancing both sides of the leg. Stretch through, press through the pinky side, then to the toe side, and then all 4 points of the foot pressing onto the block. All right, so here we are. Inhale, lift the chest, and then come forward onto your support. When you rest your head on a support like this, make sure the skin of the head is coming down towards the nose, not, you're not pushing the skin up towards the scalp here. All right. So coming forward, think of the hips rotating around the head of the femur, and which means you don't have to have, you almost have a back bend on forward bends. In fact, you have that lifted chest and that back bend on forward bend all the way down, and you can see here how much length of the back of the leg you really need. If you're rounding the back, then you don't really, you compensate, I guess, for the lack of length in the back of the leg. So lift the chest, almost have a back bend and a forward bend, and activate really the back of the leg. And you'll start really working and lengthening the back of the leg. Push through the heel, lift the kneecaps, and come down onto your support with this idea of a lifted chest. Not working the lumbar part too much, but lift the chest almost. And then come and you can do a bunch of 30-second reps up until the point where you can hold this for 3 minutes. And when you can fold here without rounding the back, then come down a little bit more. And if you can, here, work on inhaling, allowing the brain to collapse and release into its center. And as you exhale, the brain releases out into the circumference of the brain. So start softening eyes, ears, throat, and working on this energetic movement of the brain, so that when you are in your sun salutations, you can see that movement is never reversing. So you're never reversing this inhale, release in, exhale, release out. Okay, so you can pause the video here and practice this side for 3 minutes, and then we will move on to the next part of the video. Okay, so let's come out, and we're going to work on the second part of the sequence, which is we're working towards Uttanasana. So we're going to bring the left leg to, bring the left heel to your pelvis. And here we want to make sure that we're not bringing this pelvis back like this. Okay, so here we are. Come back. Here, and same thing. You can support that knee if you have to, if it doesn't come to the floor, and then again come forward. Okay, so making the leg very active, lifting the kneecaps, grounding the top of the femur down onto the ground. Inhaling, releasing in to the brain diaphragm, exhaling, releasing out. And you can do reps here again, or spend 3 minutes in the pose. When you're finished, we're going to switch sides. And we can come here, take a few breaths, soften eyes, ears, throat, soften the belly. Maybe you do one breath where you release the brain into its center, exhale, release the brain out. You can use that this technique if you're getting a headache. Sometimes you can, when you really have a bad headache, you can try to breathe. Inhale, release the brain into its center. Exhale, release that brain out into this, almost like a jellyfish. And that sometimes is very helpful. If this is too difficult here, I forgot to mention on the first side, please can add a little bit of height there underneath. Makes it easier. Bring the heel close to the pubic bone, keep this leg very straight, lift the kneecap, and then rotate around the head of the femur, come down, rest your head, and really receive that stretch on the back of the leg. So lift the chest. All right. So do your 3 minutes or your reps, and yeah. Okay, so we will move on. So then this is a great preparation for us to work on coming forward with both legs. But what I want to show you is that in forward folds, what we want to do is we want to use the sides of the body and not, so we think of, I'm folding forward, I'm really, it's a stretch of the back. So it's a stretch of the spine. So the spine is going to release, right? When you're folding forward, what you want is the tailbone to release forward. So it's not a yanking motion. It really depends, of course, on the flexibility of the back of the leg here, but also it's an action of the flank of the body. So the flank of the body really stretches and the spine just releases down. And it makes back bends feel incredibly great, right? So when we're coming into our forward fold in sun salutations, we really want to stretch the sides of the body much more, and then the spine just releases forward, the tailbone releases forward. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to work on this side of the body. So I get my support. I can have a bench, I can have blocks, or I can have a chair here. I'm going to pad it with a little blanket. In the beginning, I think we need padding. After a while, you don't. So I'm going to look at my arm here, and I'm going to look at armpit to my elbow, and I'm going to put the support about halfway. I also want an outer rotation of my arm here, so I want to make sure that the arm is in line with my body. It's also going to be very important where I can place my hand. So I'm going to put the support in the middle of the body. I'm going to bend my arm, and this is where I want my hand. Okay, so here's the hand position. Hand is on the back part of my head, fingers pointing up. So fingers up, hand in the back of the head there. All right, so I go ahead and I lay here in this Uttanasana variation, right? I'm putting my support here in the middle of my upper arm, and I can have my legs straight or bent. And then I turn the head and I place my hand with the fingers pointing up so that I get this outer rotation here. So I don't have my elbow in front of my head. I have it back in line with my body. I turn the head and slowly try to get the hand so that the fingers are pointing up towards your head. And then work on the stretch. And my support is sliding. All right. Here we go. So fingers pointing up. Right? You can do this on a coffee table or anywhere that's sturdy and not too close to the elbow. And receive that stretch. So really working on the side flank of the body. So work yourself up to 3 minutes on each side. And when you're finished, come up slowly and we'll do the second side. I'll show you the same thing on a chair. So we can use a chair or even a few blocks stacked up. Okay, so there we are. And we're working on the side of the body here. Making sure that this elbow isn't coming forward. And working on this side stretch. Making sure the fingers are pointing up. All right. And come out. So again, a few reps of 30 seconds, or hold it, 1 minute holds with a little break, and then 2 minutes, and then 3 minute holds. Okay, so now we are ready for the final pose for this video and working towards getting our forward folds and sun salutations. So we're going to incorporate a lot of what we've learned in this past 3 videos. So just recapping, we learned how to, okay, so we've learned in the first video in Dandasana how to lift the kneecaps, energize the legs, really ground the femurs, how to make sure that our heels aren't collapsing in this pose, that we're maintaining that integrity of the feet, spread the toes, push through the heel. And then we've lengthened the hamstrings and really started working on just slowly acquiring that length in the back of the legs. We worked on the head diaphragm and how to work through moments where, the work is difficult and hard, and eventually we can apply it to cardiovascular work. Now we're going to do this Uttanasana pose. That's great practice for forward folds. So if you see, it's a forward fold, but in a seated, from a seated angle. So here I have the opportunity of working on all of these things because I'm not standing up, so I don't have to hold the weight of my body. So I start with a height here. I could use my bench, or I can use a chair here and just lean on the chair here. And again, it's almost like I'm doing a back bend and a forward bend. So I do not want to think of forward bends as rounding my back. This really disrupts the energy flow. It creates a back injury, especially when you're doing it on sun salutations. So, use a lot of support and develop these slowly. All right, so keeping the feet very active, kneecaps lifted. I'm using a little bit of height underneath my sit bones. And I lift the chest from the clavicles here. I start rotating around the head of the femur. And I support my head. And I make the legs very active, knees very straight, lift the kneecaps. I bring the top of if I feel myself lifting here, I just release and send the top of the femur down to the back of the leg. And as best I can, I keep my back straight, or with its normal lumbar curve, right? You don't want to flatten the back here. So push through the heel, make the bones longer than the heel. If it were one long, solid bone, make it go through the heel. Legs active, release the eyes, the ears, and the throat. And breathe here. So full deep breaths. Actually, normal breaths are better. But use that idea of the brain diaphragm where we're releasing into the center of the brain diaphragm when you inhale. And as you exhale, you're also releasing, but releasing outward. So it's never a forced feeling. Lift the chest, work the back of the leg much more, stretch through the heels, spread the toes, lift the kneecaps, making sure that you're not dropping the kneecaps here. And then grounding the femurs down, so bringing the top of the femur down to the mat. And then finally you start, eventually you get that contact with the thigh and your abdomen. And the feeling is that you want to release the dorsal spine into the front of the body. You want to release this sacral, you want to release the back into the front, almost as if it was just releasing forward. So it's that feeling. So stretch the flank of the body much more and allow the back to release into the front body. So stretch the flank without bringing the shoulders up, but stretch the flank of the body much more. Breathe, release the back in. When you're ready, use your hands, bring yourself up. And then, since we've worked on a lot of forward bends, it's always a good idea to lay back on a block or to practice Setu Bandha. And we come back here, put a block underneath the hips. You can keep your legs bent, lift the chest, and you can be here for a few minutes. And when you're finished, just lay down in Shavasana and take your rest. I'm gonna not touch the wall with my foot. So stay here as long as you would like. Release the belly, the eyes, the ears, the throat. And really allow Shavasana to help you integrate all the different components that you've learned. You can even try one more time. You can do the brain diaphragm breathing where you release an inhalation and then release out on exhalation. And then take a few breaths where you don't do anything. You just allow things to just happen. So if your groin releases, or your belly, or if a few fibers in your thigh or in your facial muscles releases automatically on its own, just watch that happening. Take a few more breaths here in Shavasana. When you're ready, bend your knees, turn to the right, and come out. So I hope this video has helped you gain a little bit more insight onto forward folds for sun salutations. And I hope to see you on the next video where we're going to work on the hip rotators and getting those hip rotators working so that we worked on the leg aspect of forward folds, and we'll work on the hip aspect of forward folds. Thank you. See you in the next video.